The priest invited to the house of rich oilman was nervous and constantly looked at his watch. The ceremony was supposed to start 2 hours ago, but the bride was still not there. The guests whispered to each other, looking at the groom with the grin. Anthony Miller was furious. The millionaire's son was used to having all his whims fulfilled on demand. But now, he felt humiliated and insulted. "Where is Monica?" Her phone was off. The maid replied that the bride had left, and the wedding dress was still lying on the bed in her room. "Mr. Robinson, what is happening? Where is your daughter? I thought I was dealing with serious people," said Rupert Miller, who was the groom's father. At the moment, he turned very purple, and sweat broke out on his forehead. This indicated that the old man was furious, and was holding on with the last of his strength, so as not to break down. "Mr. Miller, sir, I really don't know where Monica is. Everything was going fine, and her daughter was not against the wedding, and this morning she got into a taxi and left in an unknown direction. I don't understand anything myself," Alfred Robinson answered defensively. "What kind of circus going on here? Now all the local newspapers will write that my son's fiancée ran away." Mr. Miller drawled angrily. "You won't get away with it." Then the old man talked with his wife and son, and together with them went to his car, after apologizing to the guests and the priest. Alfred Robinson looked after them anxiously. As the father of the bride, he was ashamed and wanted to sink through the ground, just not to see this shame. He raised Monica alone, and somewhere in the depths of his soul, blamed himself for being too soft in dealing with his daughter. Monica's mother died when she was not even 3 years old, and Alfred could not marry a second time. Of course, love has happened in the life of a wealthy businessman, but usually it did not lead to anything serious. Arriving home, the businessman first of all asked if Monica had turned up, but the daughter did not appear even that day or the next. Alfred was about to connect his contact with the police, when 3 days later, Monica appeared at the doorstep of the house. The girl didn't look embarrassed or confused at all. "Where have you been? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Father asked sternly. Of course, Alfred Robinson was glad that his daughter was alright, but he didn't want to show his weakness. "Dad, I don't like Anthony. I don't love him. That's why I ran away," Monica replied with annoyance. "You don't love him, you say? And then why are you going to marry him?" Alfred Robinson asked indignantly, amazed at his daughter's frivolity. "Daddy, I agreed to the wedding just for you. But then, as soon as I imagined that I would have to live with Anthony for the rest of my days, I immediately changed my mind," Monica said frankly. "Daughter, understand me. This is not a joke. Anthony's father is an influential businessman who had connections in Congress. Such people do not forget mistakes. We're going to have serious problems," Alfred Robinson exclaimed, rubbing his temples. "That's your problems, father. They don't concern me." Harder than it should have been, Monica replied and slammed the door of her room. "Mine, you say? Okay, daughter. Let's see whose this problem really are," the businessman whispered, entering the office. The next morning, Monica was woken up by a loud knock on her door. Stretching sleepily and yawning, the girl saw a guard on the threshold, who handed her a gray envelope. Opening it, Monica was surprised to find a piece of paper on which her father's handwriting was written. "Daughter, I'm going to the Youre for a month. I sincerely hope that during this time you will reconsider your attitude to life and change. I've blocked all your credit cards. From now on, no restaurants and nightclubs. And one more. You're going to live on my late father's farm, away from the temptations of the big city. My distant relative Charlotte Green lives there. I informed her about your arrival. I leave you some money for groceries. See you in 2 months. Your loving dad." Still not believing her eyes, Monica reread the letter twice. To her great chagrin, the essence of what was written did not change from this. An hour later, Monica was already on her way to a remote farm, where her father spent his childhood. "Yes, it is not a big city at all," the girl drawled sadly, looking at the leaning fences and dilapidated moss-covered roof of houses. "Well, that's it. We've arrived," the guard said shortly, getting out of the car to get a bag with Monica's things from the trunk. While the girl was looking at the house in which she was to live for the next 2 months, the guard laid Monica's luggage on the ground. Then, as if nothing had happened, he got into the car and moved towards the highway. The girl bit her lip in despair and almost burst into tears. She was so used to a comfortable and carefree life that the elementary difficulties faced by ordinary people seemed to her an unsolvable dilemma. Suddenly, behind her, she heard the cracked old woman's voice. "And you probably Alfred Robinson's daughter." Monica turned around sharply and saw an old woman who came out from courtyard of the house. "Good afternoon. Yes, I'm his daughter. Although, rather to have such father, it is better to remain an orphan," Monica exclaimed angrily. In response to this, the old lady shook her head and helped to bring things into the house. Suddenly, a plaintive squeak came from the bushes growing on the opposite side of the street. The girl, at first, decided that she had imagined it, but soon the squeak was repeated again. Monica came closer and, carefully parting the branches, saw that a tiny puppy was making such a plaintive sound. "Baby, how did you get here? And where is your mom?" Stroking the puppy on the back, the girl whispered. The puppy nuzzled Monica's palm, licking her fingers with a rough tongue. The girl's heart ached painfully, and taking the baby in her arms, she carried him into her house. Monica rummaged in her purse and pulled out a pack of oatmeal cookies. The puppy really liked the treat, and he, purring in his belly, ate his portion in a matter of seconds. The girl did not doubt at all that she would keep the baby for herself. After thinking for a minute or two, Monica decided to name the puppy Smokey. The first night on the farm, she spent hugging the tiny body of the puppy. Tired during the day, the girl slept soundly. Charlotte turned out to be a strict, laconic, but a very kind woman. She persistently taught Monica how to run the household, taught her how to cook and wash things without any washing machine, manually in a basin. Cleaning, cooking, washing, and even taking care of small vegetable garden, all this has become a girl's daily life. The most surprising thing was that Monica herself noticed that the time spent away from the metropolis affected her in a most favorable way. One day, walking down the street with Smokey, Monica saw a boy looking at her from the window of the house closest to the forest. He didn't look more than 5 years old. The kid rubbed his eyes with a plaintive look, smearing tears on his dirty cheeks. At first, Monica decided not to interfere, thinking that the boy's parents would figure it out themselves. But when she was returning from the walk back, she saw that the child was still standing at the window and crying. The girl's heart could not stand such a sight. "Now, baby, be patient," Monica exclaimed and resolutely opened the gate and entered the yard. The front door was unlocked. The house was a terrible mess. Cigarette butts and liquor bottles were strewn everywhere. Carefully avoiding the large mountains of garbage, Monica got to the nursery. The child was very weak. When he saw the girl, he stretched out his hands to her with a plaintive sob. The boy's face, hands and clothes was so dirty, as if his parents had never heard of bathing or washing. With the baby in her arms, Monica went home. Charlotte Green gasped when she saw a baby. "This is Pamela Simpson's house. She and her husband divorced and left the child to herself by court decision. She likes to wander around in search of solace in men's arms. The boy's name is Kevin. I have his father's phone number written down somewhere. Patrick was fixing my fence that year. I didn't take a cent," Charlotte said, flipping for her notebook in search of a necessary number. The old lady knew everything about everyone and was rightfully considered a local old-timer. While Monica was trying to call the boy's father, a compassionate woman bathed the baby and fed him oatmeal porridge. The hungry child pounced on the treat and, gratefully smiling, ate the whole portion. In the end, Monica managed to get through to the boy's father. When Patrick heard that his son needed help, he was a little confused, but promised to come as soon as possible. The fact that he worked in one of the gold mines in Alaska and could not leave his place of work in the middle of the season. Patrick was able to come to the farm only 3 weeks later. "Thank you so much for your help. Now I owe you," Family told me that everything is fine in the house and Kevin is doing well. It turned out that this is a lie. I have already applied to the necessary authorities in order to deprive my ex-spouse of parental rights. Patrick said, feeling emotional. The girl smiled and looked away. During this time, she became attached to Kevin with all her heart and did not want to part with the boy. Patrick didn't know what to do in such situation. On the one hand, he missed his son, and on the other, he did not want to separate him from Monica, who replaced his mother. Oddly enough, the way out was suggested by Charlotte Green. "You should live together for a while. The house is big. There is enough space for everyone." The young people, to their surprise, agreed. At first, they did not approach this idea seriously, but after living together for a month, Patrick and Monica, united by caring for little Kevin, began to look at each other with interest. Over time, their playful and fictitious relationship developed into real romance, full of love and passion. The old lady, of course, kept Monica's father up to date, secretly calling him every day. "Well, you're a real magician, Mrs. Green. My Monica was re-educated and prepared for the wedding," Alfred Robinson said admiringly when he learned that the young couple was going to get married. It was rumored that such haste was caused by the fact that Monica was carrying Patrick's child under her heart, and this means that Kevin will soon have a brother or sister. Together, they were able to play with Smokey the dog and a frolic on the lawn, delighting young parents and Charlotte, with whose light hand this happy family was formed. They are going to stay on the farm and breathe new life into it.